Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Aussie Starcraft, where we're super stoked to be bringing you this sweet submission from the channel this week. And before we say a bit more about that, let's introduce our players. In the left hand side as our pink Protoss player, it's going to be Ironlung. At the bottom right hand corner of Catalleena, as our orange Zerg player, it is Mayhem. Now, just a bit of an introduction for these two players. Two players that both play on DGTV, one of the teams that plays in the Southeast Asia region. For those of you who aren't familiar, there's a whole lot of organised amateur StarCraft that goes on in the SEA region. If you haven't participated, you really ought to. These players are Diamond and Platinum ranked respectively, and submitted this replay. I've heard that it is amazing, so looking forward to some sweet StarCraft action here. So guys, if you ever have a video you'd love to be submitted, by all means please send it to aussiestarcraftreplays@gmail.com. The link's down below, and we'll be happy to cast that for you. Excited to see what these two got up to. Obviously it is a custom game, these two players playing an in-house game against each other, so curious to see just how they decide to kick things off. Look like Mayhem's going to be moving out with an early drone scout here, trying to decide whether he will drop a spawning pool or a hatch first. Ironlung, our Protoss player, busily probing it up over here. Looks like we have a Forge Fast expand for Ironlung, and not a bad choice on Catalleena, as the natural expansion ramp is a lot smaller than many of the other maps in the map pool currently, particularly some of the new maps. Of course, this is one of our first casts on the Season 3 map pool, and I gotta love it. I gotta tell you, I love this octopus in the middle of the map. So Catalleena, one of the new maps, sort of almost like a merry-go-round Mac 2, except they're both in the map pool. Of course, it's a 3-player map, hence the reason why both our players are scouting out. Unfortunately, they both scouted in the wrong direction. The Overlord of Mayhem will shortly be finding Ironlung's spawn location. Of course, his probes scout up to the top right hand will indeed reveal the fact that Ironlung has spawned to the left. Nexus has already gone down, spawning pool still a ways away, so plenty of time yet for Ironlung to wall that in before any rogue Zerglings make their way into the base. Overlord's going to be getting a great view of the main base. No real threat for the Overlord at present. The fact that it is a Forge Fast expand means no Stalkers will be out for some time. First cannon, however, has gone down, so any of those lings that may choose to make it across the map without speed will meet a rather frosty reception on the face of that photon cannon. Another pylon coming down to help complete this wall in. Obviously, Ironlung a little bit nervous that a few Zerglings may be making their way across the map. You can see that Gas has been mining for some time as his probe swings in through the main base. And of course, well, actually the Zergling speed hasn't yet started, so maybe a little bit nervous, unsure of if that speed will be in play or not. And but the first few queens on the way here for Mayhem, so a little bit of a later Gas than perhaps you would see. Sorry, I couldn't quite finish that thought out. A bit later Zergling speed than you'd perhaps normally see. Of course, there's well and truly 100 gas banked up now for Mayhem, but deciding he's going to save that. Zergling speed starting off now, so not committing to any too early shenanigans with those Zerglings. Zealot going to come up here to complete the wall off. We have Ironlung drone up quite heavily here. Mayhem cheekily stealing one of the gas. Always a good way to annoy a Protoss opponent. Steal that gas that they become very reliant on. That's going to force Ironlung to grab the gas in his expansion just that little bit quicker. Also ensure that gas income flows quite readily, ensuring get the mothership core out in due course once that cyber core finishes up. Almost done there at the ramp. Obviously the cybernetics core very important for holding those early attacks off of the ramp. Things like early roach aggression can have the kibosh put on them by a well positioned mothership core with enough energy to photon overcharge. I have a few Zerglings coming out here for map control, not an overcommitment, just 6. Enough to scout around, ensure any early units that move out can be harassed on their way across the map. Nice Overlord placement from Mayhem, going to give him a lot of vision as things move out across the map. The high ground above this natural expansion provides quite a lot of vision and relative safety from things like Stalkers. Makes it a little bit difficult without vision from something such as the mothership core. Provides a nice radius of line of sight without compromising that Overlord safety too much. If we swap to the vision of Mayhem, we can see that these gases have been taken. He knows just what's going on. Vespene guys are in the main now being taken by Ironlung as he cleans that up with the first Zealot. And Mayhem has a pretty good idea of just how much gas is being mined by Ironlung at this point. You can see that Mayhem himself grabbing his geysers now has 3 in each and grabbing his third base. Relatively passive opening here. The Forge Fast Expand often dissuades early aggression from the Zerg player, unless of course they go for some sort of 2 or quick 3 base Roach Hydra timing. Will put quite a lot of pressure on this, but if that window passes, which it will in the next minute or two, we expect to see the Protoss player safely move into their robotics tech. We have the facility on the way, a few more gateways, so potential for a gateway timing coming up around the 10-minute mark, though not a lot of units on the field yet from our Protoss player. Tells us he just safely wants to move up his tech tree, get a few of those upgrades out, the +1 on its way now. A few more queens still on the way for Mayhem, so we have quite a lot of Zerglings out in the middle of the map, just to be safe against those quick gateway timings, things like Sentry Immortal all in. You need to have a lot of units on the field to stop it, otherwise we'll just wreck your day. We actually see Burrow Tech queued up at the third base there, so interesting choice from Mayhem. Gotta say, I love the Burrow Tech, and Macro Hatch coming down as well, so looks like Mayhem really gearing up for the later game here. Evo Chambers coming down as well to start those upgrades. We'll be a little bit behind the upgrades of Ironlung, but certainly gearing up for a longer macro game, taking that third and the Macro Hatch. It's a lot of production here for Mayhem. Could well go into some sort of Roach Hydra timing. Or once that third base has its gas taken, could well go up, could well grab a Spire and go for some Mutalisk. So lots of gas in the bank so far for Mayhem, 1200 already. Certainly banking enough gas that a few Mutalisks could well be produced, and particularly with this Immortal Sentry and Zealot Force moving out on the map, some Mutalisks would be very welcome. Unfortunately, Spire still not started, means that will be some time away. A lot of Zerglings on the field, but as I say, getting a little bit nervous for Mayhem as this force moves out across the map. Immortal Zealot Sentry has a lot of positional advantages, particularly if you stroll right up to this third base. You can block off that ramp and make life very difficult for a Zerg player. 2 force fields will seal off the ramp, and this third base could go down very quickly. So it's like Mayhem now aware of this. The Queen could go down. A few Zealots picking away at this hatchery. The Zerglings move in from the right hand side. They could well get a surround on these sentries. Force field a little bit late going down. It means the sentries will in fact be picked off. A little bit of indecision from Mayhem here as he tries to decide what he'll go for, whether he'll pick off those units or the pylon. Chooses to take out the pylon and end that aggression. Not a bad choice all told, but the hatchery was sniped, which certainly is a bit of a blow for Mayhem. His gas income will certainly suffer a little bit of a dent there. A few roaches produced as well to try and hold that off. The Immortals do so much damage to structures, makes it nice and easy to snipe that third hatchery. A few sentries did go down, but the all-important Immortal did manage to stay alive, so that's very important. We see Colossi Tech on the way in the form of the robotics base. Second Immortal coming out as well now as Ironlung gears up for potentially a second assault, but still plenty of Zerglings and Roaches on the map. Relatively even supplies for both our player, and income relatively even. Potential, oh, big Zealot run by now. A few Roaches here actually on the move command is going to cause them to take a lot of damage. Really needs to kite back a little bit with those. Unfortunately, the Roaches will lose one-on-one to a Zealot, so rather kite with those Roaches, particularly on 3, but managing to clean up those Zealots, so quite a few minerals lost for either player there. We can see relatively even resource loss, 2100 to 2500, though another wave of Zealots move in here. Really need to clean up that pylon to prevent this harass from doing damage, because while the Protoss player is fairly safe in throwing away a few minerals in Zealots, the Zerg player, it's not just the cost of the units. Oh, nicer kiting here from Mayhem as he tries to pick up those, and big Roach while moving out here is going to clean up those Zealots very quickly. And it's a big investment in lava for the Zerg player to try and kill those units. The Protoss player can produce the Zealots relatively quickly out of the warp gate, whereas the Zerg player, it's either drones or combat units. So always a little bit of a struggle here. The base going down now yet again, so third base, struggling to get that up, but big swell of roaches. The real question is, what is Mayhem going to do with these units? Just checking for other proxy pylon locations. Those Immortals very sneakily sniping the third from that right hand side, trying to make their way back home. Roaches having a look to see if they can catch them. Unfortunately, Immortals well and truly moving back to secure the third base location. Actually 4 Immortals in play now, so it's quite a lot of punch for our Protoss player. Really need to see some alternative tech go down for our Zerg, either a Hydralisk Den for some added DPS against those Immortals, or the Mutalisk would of course do very well. There are a few sentries, a few roaches being caught here. Actually sniping a sentry there isn't bad at all, but the Colossi is going to help clean up these roaches very easily. Protoss force moving a few forces to try and pin those roaches in place. And Mayhem's Overlord's going to get a nice scout of this third base, so very aware that that's going up. Moving out with a lot of Zerglings here to attempt to cancel. Nice wall off forming here with some more gateways and a photon cannon. I really like the positioning on that third base. Allows that photon cannon to be nice and secure. It'll be very hard to kill that with Zerglings. And it's only open to attack really from this right hand angle. And unfortunately for Ironlung, Army's a little bit out of position here with Zerglings coming around from behind. Not too sure what they're hoping to accomplish there. Very difficult to sort of get the surround from that angle. And a few Zerglings going down, but the bulk of this Zerg army now moving out, starting to look quite intimidating indeed. 150 supply to 103, and we have enough Hydralisks here to really do quite some damage. Colossi now in play. We have 2 Colossi with the army, third one coming out. I believe Extended Thermal Lance has already finished up. We are if we check out the upgrades tab, we can see it's 2-1 for the Protoss, and to the 1-1 of our Zerg player, 2-2 of course for our Zerg, going to finish up well and truly before the Protoss armor. The Zerg army actually jumps on top of this Colossus and manages to pick it off. Mothership Core also goes down, so picking off quite a lot of those expensive gas units. Archon being Morphe on the front is going to die as soon as it spawns. These Immortals starting to take a lot of damage. So unfortunately for Ironlung, being caught out of position there and allowing these Zerg units to get right on top of his army before his Colossi could actually kite back up the ramp. These Immortals are going to be enough to scare away the last few Hydralisks. Zealot charge not yet researched, meaning these Hydralisks are going to make it away as a reinforcement group of roaches moves across the map, so got to be really careful with this chase, as Zealot's going to get picked off very quickly, and the potential actually for these Immortals to get sniped, particularly if there's a few Zerglings thrown in with this, makes it nice and easy to try and catch those units as they fall back. Immortals and Sentries certainly not the quickest units. That Overlord now going to take a couple of pot shots from the photon cannon, be forced backwards. Colossi is out on the field again, so there's starting to be enough Protoss units to deter this, but the Zerg swarm's certainly starting to beef up. Corruptors are on the field now, which will make taking down those Colossi a little bit easier. Managed to pick them off in the last engagement, but part of that was due to the positioning. Can be very difficult for a Zerg player, particularly Roach Hydra without Vipers, can really struggle to pick off those Colossi. You can see a lot of Roaches and Hydras coming out as the Zerg rockets up in supply. Mayhem shooting near to 200 supply, almost double the supply of his Protoss opponent. This could be quite a difficult hold for our Protoss play. We have 2 Colossi in position, but apart from that, there's a massive swarm of Roach Hydra with Corruptor. I think it's going to take all the cunning Ironlung can bring to bear on this engagement. Certainly needs great positioning here to ensure this Zerg army doesn't just wallop over the top and getting caught on the low ground. Certainly not the start he's looking for. Ironlung unfortunately unaware of this Zerg army until it barrels in. Going to be able to focus down that photon cannon very quickly. Colossi need to be super careful not to be caught out front. We have a few Corruptors here, can potentially corrupt. Indeed, I believe that did go down there. Nice storms on this Roach Hydra core. It's going to do massive damage with the Colossi managing to finish a lot of those units up. Second Colossi still up, doing massive damage until it also falls. We have Zealots being warped in here on the front line, taking a bit of damage for these Immortals. 10 kills on one Immortal, 17 on the other one as it stutters back towards the mineral line. We have massive damage on either side. Both players plummet in supply. We have Ironlung dropping to 75 supply. Zerg players down to 96 himself. The Corruptors in the air, not able to do a whole lot. Potential to corrupt these Stalkers if at all possible. This photon cannon actually starting to do a good deal of damage. It looks like Ironlung will be able to hold this nice position from the Hydralisk. Going to allow the cleanup of a lot of these Zealots. Now that front Hydralisk is fallen, the remainders will also be cleaned up, but we check out the Workers Killed tab for the amount of damage we've seen back and forth in this game. Seen remarkably few workers killed. Both players doing a great job of evacuating their worker lines in time. They have 154 units killed to 82, as it's a very literal slaughterhouse back and forth. We have Mayhem quite diligently avoiding the Mutalisk transition. He's banked up 1400 gas against it. Potential for a very dangerous Mutalisk switch any time now. As soon as those minerals match his gas, could easily drop 14 or 16 Muta. Particularly devastating. There is enough Archons here to, High Templar to warp to Archons, but relatively few other units that can actually shoot up. So, got to be a bit careful here. Roaches here can tank those storms quite nicely. We have an observer there spotting the army. Unfortunately, the Overseer will allow the Zerg to shoot that down quite quickly. Zerg player needing to take a 4th base, which he has done. Continue to keep that economy nice and fresh. Almost 2k gas in the bank, and this is an extremely dangerous position for our Protoss player to be in. Our Zerg player almost maxed out. Our Protoss player is down almost 70 supply. Plenty of energy for Storm, but needs to make sure he can do the remainder of the damage needed to clean up these units. Things like Photon Overcharge will be incredibly important. Protoss ground weapons level 3 almost finished up. If it finished in time for that fight, which it did, it will make a massive difference in this coming engagement. These Zealots can do so much damage. Storm coming down on top of this force and doing a lot of damage to these Roaches. Unfortunately, got to get those Storms back on the Hydras, and the remainder of the Storms excellent there. As Mayhem tries to engage, his Colossus coming down from the high ground just in time. Corruptor will be sniped by those Stalks, and it looks like Ironlung will hold with remarkably few units. The Zealots buying just enough time for him as those High Templar lay down just an absolute slaughterhouse of storms. So a lot of damage from those 6 High Templars churned out there. We have the remainder of the Zerg army. It's taking quite a bit of damage. Probably not a bad idea to actually burrow a few of these Roaches, regen that health, ensure you don't lose the units for free. 2k minerals, 2.5k gas in the bank. We actually see an Ultralisk Captain on the way, so definite potential for an Ultralisk transition here. A little bit surprised we haven't seen the Mutalisk transition. Could have been quite potent with the lack of air units. The Archons, of course, always a big disincentive for Zerg to go air, particularly these 3 that will warp in, but the Mutalisk certainly would give a lot of map control to Mayhem. Would be very difficult for Ironlung to move out, particularly while these expansions are only defended by singular photon cannons. Also, this production in the main could also be injured quite significantly by Mutalisk harassment. The Protoss army is starting to get a little bit more terrifying. Numerically quite small, but in terms of raw DPS, I gotta tell you, this many High Templar with Colossi could do massive damage. Really want to group these Archons up with the Protoss army. We see that Ironlung's been pretty diligent with these proxy pylons, continuing to harass with Zealots, managing to establish quite a lot of those pylons around the map and harass from time to time. Mayhem grabbing what would be his 6th base, and you start to get an idea of just how large Catalleena is as a map. Looks relatively small, only 3 player, but we can see 6 bases taken. There's still bases remaining on Mayhem's side of the map. So Catalleena, excellent map, potential for larger macro games as well as very aggressive early game. We can see that these 2 players starting to go at it as mid-game is well and truly transitioning into late game. Both players starting to get their tier 3 units. We even have some Ultralisks on the field here. Bit interesting composition. We don't often see Roach Hydra Ultralisks, but a few Vipers in here to make it work as well, and I think they will become very important. A few probes, long distance mining, while that Nexus is finishing up on low ground location the 4th. We have the 3 Colossi now here. 1 Colossi hiding underneath the Mothership Core as Mayhem starts to move in for the kill. Can he get off some good abducts? A few feedbacks could really end this attack before it begins, but I think he may well get him. The Vipers moving in for the abduct. The Vipers unfortunately seem to be on a move command. They don't actually grab anything before the High Templar manage to neutralise them. Storms going down on the Zerg force. We have all of the Colossi will fall here. The last Colossi being focused down by these Corruptors, and it looks like our Protoss players are going to hold, but by the skin of his teeth, 2 more Archons morphing in. A few emergency Zealots come in to take out these last 2 Roaches, but it looks like Ironlung will hold, albeit barely. 85 supply to 160. Unfortunately for Mayhem, probably better served by abducting those Colossi before the engagement begins, but there are an awful lot of things to focus on. Ironlung positioning very nicely up against that edge, forcing the Roaches and Hydralisks into a very small space, and baiting them in for those storms. So nice engagement from both our players. Ironlung clinging to this game, his supply almost perpetually behind as our Zerg player remaxes, and we start to see the strength of the swarm here. We see a Protoss player struggling to rebuild as quickly as possible, 110 supply, whereas our Zerg player with that massive bank able to remax almost instantly. Looks like Ironlung will move out and attempt to try and probe the Zerg player's base, see if he can get a little bit of damage done, but two Archons and a Colossi probably going to find themselves outgunned by this 200 supply Zerg army. Plenty of Corruptors here, not a lot to shoot at though. Red health Corruptors die very quickly to those Archons. We'll see, these two armies could well pass like ships in the night as Mayhem moves out for the new fourth base of Ironlung. Ironlung swinging here, he does have a reinforcing pylon, so the real question will be, can he hold it home? And there's literally no defences here as the Zergling swarms straight up the ramp. Ultralisk going to struggle to get through that gap as a base. Full-on base race has started here. Zealots in the mineral line tearing through these workers as the Zerg army bursts straight into the natural. Looks like Mayhem will go for the production. A few of these Ultralisks potentially could go for this third base. Looks like they are going to focus on the natural expansion as the Protoss army just moves straight up into the natural, and Mayhem wants to go for these production buildings. And always a good way to cripple a Zerg player. A lot of lava banked up here for Mayhem. We see literally hundreds of lava, 87 lava on the field, but not a lot in production as the Zerg army is busily hacking away at the Protoss production. We see all the Colossi tech and the Stargate falling here right for a Mutalisk transition though. Only 800 gas, going to make that a little bit difficult. The Protoss army is base racing at a phenomenal rate. The Zerg army struggling to clean up the Ultralisks and Zerglings, getting in each other's way just a little bit here. The Protoss army is actually split to try and take out the fourth base. Well, we have an Oracle, a few DTs, also proving very difficult here. We have Ironlung throwing down some bases, or attempting to throw down some base on the right hand side, only to find that there are in fact hatcheries already here. We have Zerg players and Protoss players trying to drop bases on each other left, right and centre in what is quickly shaping up to be a very silly base race. The Spire's going down now here, the Zealots, and the Hive has also fallen. So we're down to what could only be termed a very small number of structures left. Oh, wrong tab there. For some reason my structures tab's being just a little bit difficult. Where's that gone? We'll have to go back to the units tab. Unfortunately the structures tab doesn't seem to want to play ball tonight. We can see the number of structures on the map is very diminished for both our players. Protoss player has mass recalls here in an attempt to try and clean out these bases on the right hand side rather than defending that mining fourth base. Protoss player deciding he will continue to clean up this Zerg base, doesn't want to let that Zerg player get any more established than he already is, though the army supply very even for both our players. Protoss starting to drop now, almost down to 100 supply as these probes get cleaned up. We see the army supply of Mayhem is much higher than that of our Protoss player, 140 to 90 supply, almost no workers left in, and all that's left for Ironlung is to decide the field of our final engagement. We have these Dark Templars moving around, crazily sniping the last of these Zerg buildings. We have a few photon cannons and a forge being established here to make life difficult. And it looks like Ironlung will be forced to defend this final location. Zerg player re-expanding to his own main base, also taking his natural though in sight of these pylons. Another base being taken on the left hand side, and a hatch from Mayhem as well. We have bases all intertwined here as Ironlung tries to decide how he'll engage this Zerg army. One of the things going for Ironlung is there's no actual overseers on the map. I'm not sure if Ironlung's aware, but he could just send these Dark Templars into the Zerg army with wanton abandon. They could go to town on these Ultralisks and Roaches. So, love to see those Dark Templars doing that. Always great in a base race scenario. Snipe your opponent's observer tech and then make life very difficult by sending those Dark Templar in to do what your units may not be able to do. Looks like this one may come down to the wire, folks. It's epic 33 minutes of action thus far. We have Dark Templar here trying to clean up the remaining bases of Mayhem, whilst Mayhem moves around with his army. Unknown to Ironlung, he does have a bit of an advantage with those Dark Templar. We'll see what he decides to do with them once he cleans up this base. Instead using them to snipe the buildings. Not a bad choice there as a Zerg player. You'll start to run out of minerals though. Protoss player certainly does need to ensure that he can hold this remaining base. Zealot's here to tank for these photon cannons, probably wants to get the Archons in a position towards the back, don't want them being sniped by those Ultralisks. The Forge is going down right before it dies. We will see a lot of cannons warped in here at the top of the ramp for Ironlung. That does make life very difficult for Ultralisks, just in case you're wondering. Ultralisks really struggle with building placement, the right sort of placement on those buildings. Make life very difficult. We have more hatcheries going up for Mayhem as those DTs keep very occupied running around the map trying to clean those up. The looks like the Zerg army is going to barrel down towards this final expansion. Colossus will lose so much damage in this final engagement. A few Corruptors here trying to focus down the Corruptors. Massive storm damage when we see the Zerg supply start to plummet. Colossus doing massive work here, unfortunately not focusing firing down the Corruptors. The Corruptors instead shooting the Mothership core. They will take down the Colossus. It did have a mammoth 27 kills. This Zerg army looks like it may actually make it through. There's 2 Archons down to 1 Archon. This Archon almost no shields left. Can the Ultralisk kill? Indeed it will. Looks like these last few Zerg units might actually break the line. 2 Ultralisks barreling through. Photon Cannon gets one last shot off and drops that Ultralisk. Ultralisk going to barrel through the Archon and kill it. We have one poor High Templar, enough energy for a feedback, but not enough to kill these units. Whoa, Storm does drop on those units. One Roach will die, but unfortunately the Storm also killing the Probe in friendly fire action. Ultralisk going to town on this final Nexus. There are no Protoss units except for 1 Oracle and 3 Dark Templar out on the map, making their way around. 1 Dark Templar is going to be defending this final Nexus. There's almost nothing in the way of Zerg units that can attack it. Only these few units, no detection. Looks like it's going to come down to the wire, ladies and gentlemen. These Overlords not doing a whole lot, but there's very little for them to do. Creep Tumors just humming away in the bottom corner. This game's too crazy for Creep Spread. None of that from Mayhem here as he just tries to survive as best he can. These Dark Templars spreading out to kill the final structures. Final Protoss Nexi has fallen, only to reveal that there is yet another one on the map. So Ironlung is still not being revealed. It has this singular structure, this Zerg army sweeping out. Overlords now being utilised to try and locate that Nexus. It could be tucked anywhere. Often in these base race scenarios you'll see players tuck it away in a spot that would normally avoid detection, be tucked away against one of the structures on the map, and it looks like with that final kill Mayhem will actually take the game, managing to snipe those last 2 hatches with the Dark Templar in a 37-minute epic Protoss vs Zerg. Congratulations to Ironlung managing to hold off against what were some very difficult Zerg attacks, managing to hold on by the skin of his teeth. GG to both these players. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any games that you'd like to see submitted, please send them in just like this one. Happy to cast those for you anytime. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed your time here on Aussie StarCraft. By all means, if it is your first time, we'd love to see you subscribe for future games. We'll be casting plenty more StarCraft 2 action right after this. Thanks guys, and a big shout out to Ironlung and Mayhem. Great players and very cool guys to play with. Join them on SC2SEA for some more StarCraft shenanigans. Thanks guys.